My father left me a broken watch that hadn't worked in 40 years. The numbers engraved inside led me to the truth about his death. Dad died when I was 7 years old. Heart attack, my mother always said. Sudden, tragic, nothing anyone could have done. We buried him on a rainy Tuesday and never spoke about him again. Mom remarried 2 years later to a man named Richard, who I was told to call my new father. Richard was strict and cold and made it clear that asking questions about my real dad would not be tolerated in his house. So I stopped asking. I locked away my memories and tried to move on like everyone wanted. 30 years later, Mom died peacefully in her sleep. Richard had passed 5 years before her. I was cleaning out her house when I found a box hidden in the back of her closet. Inside was my father's watch. It was old and tarnished with a cracked face that showed the hands frozen at 3:47. I remembered Dad wearing this watch every single day when I was little. I had forgotten about it completely until that moment. My chest got tight as I held it. Memories came flooding back. His laugh, his cologne, the way he used to carry me on his shoulders through the park. That's when I noticed the inscription on the back. Most of it was worn away, but I could make out numbers scratched into the metal. Not a serial number, something else. 472388, followed by the letters SDB. I spent weeks trying to figure out what it meant. I searched through Dad's old papers. I visited places from my childhood. I talked to relatives who barely remembered him. The answer came from my grandmother's sister, Aunt Ruth, who was 93 years old and sharp as a tack. SDB means safe deposit box, she said when I showed her the watch. Your father always said he kept important things at First National Bank downtown. That was his branch. My hands started shaking. What important things? Aunt Ruth's face got serious. Your daddy was scared of something before he died, honey. He told me once that if anything happened to him, the truth would be waiting for whoever was smart enough to find it. First National Bank still existed, though it had been bought by a bigger company. I walked in with the watch and the numbers and a prayer that something would still be there after all these years. It was. The safe deposit box had been paid up for 50 years in advance. Inside was an envelope addressed to me in my father's handwriting. I sat in a private room and read the letter with tears streaming down my face. Dad hadn't died of a heart attack. He had been poisoned. He had discovered that his business partner, a man named Gerald, was embezzling money from their construction company. When Dad threatened to go to the police, Gerald poisoned his coffee during a meeting. The doctors missed it because the symptoms looked like a heart attack. Dad knew he was dying by the time he wrote the letter. He included copies of financial records, names of witnesses who had since disappeared, a confession from a secretary who had seen Gerald put something in Dad's cup. Gerald had died 15 years ago, beyond the reach of justice. But my mother wasn't. The letter explained that Mom knew what Gerald did. She kept quiet because Gerald promised her money and security. She married Richard because he was Gerald's cousin and helped cover everything up. My mother watched my father's killer go unpunished and took money to stay silent. I sat in that bank for 2 hours trying to process what I had learned. My whole life had been built on lies. The woman who raised me had betrayed the man I loved most in the world. I couldn't confront Mom. She was already gone. I couldn't confront Gerald or Richard. They were dead too. The only thing I could do was tell the truth. I wrote everything down and sent copies to a journalist who specialized in cold cases. The story ran 6 months later. Gerald's family had to return millions in stolen assets. The construction company's victims finally got justice. I visit Dad's grave every year on his birthday now. I tell him I found the watch. I tell him I found the truth. I tell him I'm sorry it took so long. The watch sits on my nightstand, still frozen at 3:47, the time he stopped hiding and started fighting back.